Welcome back to the Animal Intuitive Show. Today we're diving into a fascinating and heartwarming topic, the incredible connection between neurodivergent individuals and animals. I'm sorry if you couldn't hear me, my microphone was over to the side. And if you've ever wondered how animals can provide comfort, companionship, and even therapeutic benefits for autistic children and adults, you won't want to miss this conversation. And all you doggies, won't you walk with me? I'm the puppet dog. Hi there, and again, welcome to the Animal Intuitive Show channel. I'm Ann Angela Webb, and here we explore the incredible world of animals and their people through animal communication, acupressure, massage, and other ways of deepening our connection with them. I'm excited to welcome two incredible guests today, Dr. Gary Brucato and Dr. Mikki Lee, both bring deep expertise in working with neurodivergent individuals, including children and adults on the autism spectrum. Dr. Mikki Lee is a licensed psychologist and certified school psychologist, specializing in autism, ADHD, and neurodivergent populations, with extensive experience conducting psychological assessments and providing support for autistic children and adults. Dr. Lee is passionate about helping families better understand their child's unique strengths and challenges. A lifelong animal lover, Dr. Lee has witnessed firsthand the incredible bond that can form between neurodivergent individuals and animals. And she believes deeply in the healing power and connecting power of animals, especially for those who struggle with traditional forms of social interaction. I'm thrilled to have Dr. Lee join the Animal Intuitive channel today to share her insights on how animals can play a vital role in supporting emotional and social well-being of autistic individuals. And before we go right into Dr. Brucato, I do just want to double check that we have no issues and everyone can hear us. Yay, nobody's saying we can't hear you, and that is wonderful. So Dr. Brucato, many of you are familiar with him. They are actually colleagues together. I neglected to say that at Clarity Therapy, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. But that's a clinical, Dr. Brucato is a clinical and forensic psychologist internationally recognized for his research on violence and severe mental illness, in addition to his forensic work. In Dr. Brucato's private practice, he works with individuals on the autism spectrum, as well as those with personality, mood, and anxiety disorders. He has contributed to groundbreaking research in psychology and is a member of the expert panel for the Cold Case Foundation. Dr. Brucato has authored numerous publications, including being the co-author of The New Evil, Understanding the Emergence of Modern Violent Crime, which is presently used as a textbook in several American forensic training programs. In 2020, it was ranked number 91 in Short Form's list of the best forensic psychology books of all time. Dr. Brucato also co-authored the book Understanding and Caring for People with Schizophrenia, 15 clinical cases in 2020, with Drs. Reggie, I'm not saying this probably right, Dr. Reggie R. Gierkes and Jeffrey A. Lieberman. Almost, okay. And Dr. Brucato has been featured in many major media outlets like A&E, Oxygen, True Crime, and the New York Times. You've seen them all over YouTube. And together, Drs. Lee and Brucato bring valuable perspectives on autism, mental health, and the role of animals in therapeutic support. Welcome, Dr. Brucato and Dr. Lee.
Thank you.
Thank you. Extensive background, so I hope we just want to check in here and see. Yes, hi, Miss Jill. Hi, Mel Mack. Thank you so much for being here. And yeah, so I'm very excited that Dr. Brucato, Dr. Lee are going to help bring awareness to this, and we really do appreciate you all for being here. So thank you. All right. So, and anyone who's watching, by the way, if you happen to be watching this on the replay, please definitely share this with people who might benefit, who may not have heard about this episode that we're having today. So I just wanted to mention that. So Dr. Brucato, Dr. Lee, I do want to jump into this, but before we dive in, I would love it if maybe Dr. Lee, you could tell us a little bit first. You could start with what got you experienced in this field, what brought you to be working with people with autism.
Sure, I would love to. I kind of fell into it in high school. I was working as a teacher's assistant at a special needs school. So it was a preschool actually. So most of the children that I worked with had a diagnosis of autism, and it was my first, I guess, the first time dipping my toe into that world and working with those children. And I really loved it. And it got me wondering if maybe I wanted to work in the schools. And I explored that a little bit, realized that I really enjoyed working one-on-one or in small groups rather than like leading a classroom, which, wasn't for me, but I appreciate our teachers so much. And so I decided to go to graduate school to get my doctorate. My doctorate is actually from Hofstra University, and it's a combined like school clinical program. So much of my experience has been working in various school settings, like public, private, specialized, as well as mental health clinics and that kind of setting. So both like in school and outside of schools, I worked with many children and their families, children with special needs, not just autism, but that's sort of where I got started. And then I spent many years in the schools working as a school psychologist. And around the time of the pandemic, sort of expanded into private practice. And that happened kind of naturally.
Got it. Okay. And how about you, Dr.
There's a delay.
Oh, yeah, I think we do have a little bit of a delay. Very low.
Okay. Can you guys hear me clearly?
I can.
Can you guys hear me? Anne, you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
I think Anne's mic is a little warm.
I muted myself for a second. I've got a big cat on a not huge table. I'm trying to move her out of the way before she destroys this whole show. There we go. Okay. We love her, but she's big. Okay.
I love it. When I first began to encounter individuals on the autism spectrum in other areas of work, I started to encounter them first in work I was doing assessments in neuropsychology. I was particularly interested in very high IQ individuals, people that might be called prodigious. I always had a special interest in that subject because I was a child pianist. So I had a great interest in kids who had prodigious abilities, prodigious artists, things like that. And it probably won't come as any shock that a number of the individuals were people who turned out to actually be on the autism spectrum. And the other area was that working at Columbia Medical Center, I had been the assistant director of the early psychosis clinic. And people that are very early in the process, autism. And so we wound up with a lot of people who were false positives for risk for that. And I wound up encountering a lot of individuals who never went on to develop anything like that, who just turned out to be people on the spectrum. And I wound up having such special connection with individuals on the spectrum and feeling such a kinship with them. And I think enjoying working with individuals who had a way of thinking about things that was a little bit outside of the box and kind of wonderful, because I'm drawn to anything that's outside of the box and the commonplace in the way people think about things, and that it was a match made in heaven. So I wound up in private practice doing a great deal of work with people on the spectrum, and it's been extremely rewarding.
Very interesting. I didn't know that you're a pianist, Dr. Brucato. That might be something that.
Oh yes, in fact, you probably see the piano behind me.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Yeah.
So we get to see another side of Dr. Brucato here. He's on so many shows. People love him on so many shows. But I feel very special because we get to have another perspective from you. So pretty cool. So I thought maybe we would just start out by also mentioning that if you have questions in the chat, please feel free to post them there. We will be checking the chat for any questions, comments. But maybe we could clarify the difference between emotional support animals versus therapy animals.
Sure. So emotional support animals are typically a pet, like a family's pet, that is not trained to provide a service in a way that a service animal is trained. So emotional support animals are typically there to do exactly what they are called, what it sounds like, to provide emotional support. Very often ESAs, as we call them, or the acronym, is just to provide support and reduce anxiety and reduce stress and be a comforting presence for their owner. It's different from therapy dogs who are specifically trained. They have to go through a training to either they sense that something is about to happen, like maybe their owner is becoming dysregulated. Service animals can also sense when something like medically is going to go wrong. But when it comes to like this, for our topic, our purpose, I think that there's a lot of research that supports animals like service dogs for autistic children, and how that they can provide emotional support, sensory support, uh, a multitude of benefits for autistic children and their families. But the main difference is that one is trained specifically and one is not.
Right. Okay. So maybe you could talk a little bit more too in your practice. How do you see animals helping autistic individuals feel more comforted, supported?
So I don't specifically work with animals in my practice, but I do know that there's a lot of research that supports animal-assisted therapy. So this could be therapeutic horseback riding. This could be with dogs. This could be therapy animals that are visiting school settings or visiting hospitals. There's a lot of research that supports the animal interactions that are involved when supporting autistic children and their families. So while I don't specifically use it in my practice, I would love to one day. That would be wonderful. But there are specific places where you can go to receive animal assisted therapy, and there's usually like a pretty robust assessment process to make sure that the family that's going in, that kind of therapy is appropriate for them, or that that child is going to respond well to that sort of therapy.
Are you so you have clients who are enrolled in these kinds of programs? And
So not the therapeutic horseback riding, although I find that fascinating. I think it's helpful for many people. But I do work with clients who have emotional support animals. So it's usually like a dog or even a cat or a small rabbit. It's an animal that sometimes they can bring to the schools. Sometimes it's just meant for the home setting. I also have worked with clients that have service dogs, service animals that go with them on like flights, for example. Any situation that might cause high stress, high anxiety, or some sort of like meltdown, having a service animal there could be really, really beneficial in providing the sensory support and the grounding and just reduce stress levels for children. And obviously this helps their family as well.
and Dr. Brucato, I'm curious, with the work that you do, are you working mostly with
Mhm.
adults or also with children?
Oh, a mixture. I particularly like working with adolescents that are on the spectrum, and one of my favorite populations to work with are people who are newly diagnosed. For example, I'm the one who comes up with the diagnosis because I have found that being shepherded through the process of discovering that one is neurodivergent for the first time is very, very important and critical. If the individual has a frightening experience or a negative experience or feels judged or so forth, it could change the entire course of the person's life and willingness to interface with therapeutic environments. And so I think it's very important. What happens is I wind up developing really powerful connections with individuals like that, and they often stick around for years and years and years. And regarding working with animals, what I think is extremely important, I think what I'll say is can really be generalized to any population, any mental health population. probably even any non-mental health population, is that, for a lot of people who come to therapy, there is a sort of incidental thing, right? The thing that they're coming to therapy for, that is not really truly the heart of the matter, right? There's like the diagnostic category they fall into, and all that is very important, of course. But the reality is that for most people, the real question is, have you been loved stably? Have you had objects in your life, people that you knew when they were coming and going and loved you no matter what, right? That really makes the difference, I have found, in the center of a human being's life. And the thing about animals is that the relationship with them is extremely predictable. They're stable objects, stably loving. They're always going to be the same. I mean, of course, there are animals that, can get frightened and act out and so forth. But the idea is that for the individual, you're putting love into taking care of the animal, and the animal loves you back perfectly. And I think for a lot of people, that stable object is very similar to what happens when they go to therapy, that they have a person that's kind of always there for them and always the same. And in the setting always being the same. For example, I have found that if I change the therapeutic room, it can be very upsetting to someone who's neurodivergent, because the sameness is very important and stabilizing. I remember once I took my dress jacket off for the first time in many weeks of meeting with a new client on the spectrum. And the person said, "You have to put the jacket back on. Dr. Brucato, where's the jacket?" So put the jacket back on. So I think pets have a way of kind of giving one that sense. And the other thing, of course, is that, pets really drive home how many elements there really are to an interaction with a living being, right? And you really start to understand with people who are neurodivergent how much of love and affection that people give you is sensory. The sensation of, for example, somebody hugging you or putting their hand on your arm or around your shoulder or something and giving you, with oxytocin or whatever it is that suddenly gives you a surge of, that bonds you to somebody, right? We know that, for example, dopamine is what makes us evolutionarily bond to people. As a matter of fact, as a side note, that process can go very haywire, because when you're a little kid, you're going to bond to your parents even if they're awful. You'll get little dopamine surges to make you bond with them. And that's why some people, for the rest of their lives, get excited when they're around people who are awful to them, because they bonded to people evolutionarily when they were kids who weren't being very nice to them. And so what happens with a pet, of course, is you get that kind of dopamine surge, that oxytocin surge when you're petting them. Very calming. It's very sensory. And I have to tell you, even myself, I mean, there's very few things I love as much as, just sitting and kind of watching the fish swim. It's very calming, right? And so I think there's a lot going on there that can be therapeutic. And then, of course, there's the element of teaching a person responsibility and structure, having to take care of the animal. And then there's the element of loss, the idea that you may lose the animal and have to learn to deal with that reality. So I think there's a lot to it, and it becomes a way of teaching someone how to have a relationship and all the steps that go into it, and how to have a supportive figure in your life.
Right. Okay, thank you. And we do actually, as both of you have been talking, we have questions coming in.
Oh, good.
Okay, let me see here. So
You'll learn right away that Dr. Bricato is the master of the short answer. You say,
Super short
luck.
answers.
So Nikki,
No, I see the questions
You get the
too.
long-winded academic.
Sorry, go on.
Nikki says, "Thank you so much. Dr. Brucato is the best. My son is autistic, very bright, struggles socially, but absolutely loves children and animals. He feels peace with them." And Miss Jill says, ask the question, I should say, what's the best way to encourage, educate, or get, I guess it says get guy in front of parents of autistic children. I think maybe there's a miss. I'm not sure what that meant. Maybe you could type that. But what's the best way to encourage, educate, or get in front of parents of autistic children and adults who are not yet on board with getting a dog? I'm not sure. In front of parents.
Mm.
Are you maybe from an education perspective? Oh, buy-in. Okay, I got to keep scrolling. So get buy-in
Oh, buy-in.
from parents.
Yeah. I mean,
Good question, actually.
really like the whole family buy-in, right? Sorry, Dr. Brucato, you were saying something.
All yours.
Okay. I was okay. I was saying like that, like everyone has to buy in, right? Like first of all, the child, if the autistic child or adult, like, do they buy into this? You know, how do they respond to a dog in front of them? Do they thoroughly enjoy it? Do they enjoy just animal interactions? Do they enjoy the sensory experience? Are they sensitive to like the noises or the barking? What kind of, how we would have to assess like their ability to help care for this animal, like how can they help their family members taking care of it. So first of all, like the person, the autistic individual in that family would have to be on board with this. And also it has to fit with the family's lifestyle and their resources. Are they able to take on the responsibilities of caring for an animal? What kind of animal is it? Is it going to be just a pet? Is it going to be an ASA? Is it going to be a service animal? So there's a lot of questions that go into it. It's not so like cut and dry. And I think that each family has to do their own research and investigation to see if this is appropriate for them, because it's not just one person, it affects the whole system.
And also I'm wondering, depending on if they're verbal, nonverbal, how might a family gauge if the child really is interested in having this animal?
Yeah, I mean, if the child is verbal, obviously they might be able to share more about their feelings of having an animal. But it's also just like observing how the child interacts with animals in other settings, like with a therapy animal that maybe visits the school, or do they show an interest, like a genuine interest in like petting animals that they see? Do they seem like, do they feel calm, or do they seem calm in the presence of animals, or maybe they are familiar with animals visiting their school setting, or maybe they already receive animal assisted therapy. I think it's you have to take a comprehensive look into how they respond verbally and non-verbally to animal interactions in their life. And I think that there are ways that you could sort of like dip your toes in and see. You could visit the zoo. You could visit an adoption, program, or a shelter. You can see how they interact with a friend's dog or a friend's cat, or it doesn't have to be a dog necessarily. It could be, a smaller animal. And to see, even if they're nonverbal, I think that there are definitely cues to assess if this is something that might be a good fit for them.
Okay. And so I guess you arrange kind of these test visits, maybe if you're not sure. That helps you.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously some kids can just tell you that they want one, maybe. Are there times when you end up advising against it, or does that not happen often?
There are definitely times where I would caution that maybe it's not the right time, or maybe to reconsider or to look at other options. In the document that I shared, which is sort of like a readiness checklist, I included 3 points, like when to reconsider. And one of them is if a child is not exactly, they're not yet safe around animals. They maybe they're like pulling the tails, or maybe they're not behaving in a way that they are ready for that kind of responsibility. Not yet, at least. So if they show any behavior towards the animals that's unsafe, it wouldn't be the right fit. If there are the presence of severe allergies or asthma, obviously that wouldn't be good. And most importantly, I think if there are like fears of the animals or an animal in particular that might outweigh the potential benefits at that time. Like maybe they need a little bit more structured, limited interactions with animals. Like they need to be exposed more to animals before they are ready to be in the presence of animals that frequently. That would involve like having an ESA or being in animal assisted therapy. It's not that they could never, it will never be a good fit. It just may not be a good fit at that time.
Okay.
Right. And I think it's important to remember, because we're dealing with a population that by definition thinks differently than the average person, right? That when you say to most people pet, what that activates semantically in the brain is pictures of cats and dogs and birds and fish and things like that. But pet to someone who's neurodivergent could be anything from an ant farm to an exotic lizard to a giant tortoise to a snake to anything else. And the idea is important to remember that there is a wide array of animals out there. If you're allergic to cat hair, cat dander on cats, then take a look at the reptile world, that kind of thing. Get fish. In other words, there's some kind of life, another heartbeat you can bring into the house, that I think of many, many types. Personally, I like all animals, and so I think we just want to bear that in mind, just in case people think we just mean things with four legs and tails.
Right. And it does really, though, bring up we kind of touched on it a little bit, I think, before, that the whole family or wherever they're living, they have to be able to support them, right? Because if it's, I know my husband would love a lizard or a snake, and I just can't. I'm like, so what if you had to maybe, I don't know, go away for a weekend or something? Who's going to be giving the snake its food that I really don't feel comfortable? That's like not my thing. So yeah, everyone's got to be on board. Fish tanks can become, hard to clean, things like that. So yeah, there's a lot to consider if it isn't, well, and dogs of course have to be walked, and cats have to, there's a lot of maintenance. So I think that's a good point you made before, that everybody has to really be on board. It has to be a good discussion, not just an impulsive thought, oh, this will be great. So, and we do have some other, okay. So, Nikki asks, why is it that autistic children may find children and animals comforting and relaxing? My son is nearly 12. My thoughts were that animals and children are non-confrontational.
Yeah. Sorry, I was going up to her question. Yeah. So I think that animals in general are very comforting and relaxing. Like they provide a sense of companionship without any need for words, right? They're just there. They're just present with you. And sometimes that's the most supportive feeling, right? Just like knowing that your pet, whether it's a four-legged animal or a tortoise or a snake or whatever it might be, like the fact that they
Tortoises have
enjoy.
4 legs.
Yeah, I mean, of course. I meant like whether it's like a fish or not a fish, like you know what I mean. All kinds of animals can be a source.
If your fish has 4 legs, something's wrong. But
yeah, if your fish has 4 legs, like, maybe it's not really a fish, but like the idea is that like any animal that you have a connection with, that you formed a bond with, is going to be, it's going to provide a source of just love and companionship and acceptance. And there's less of a social demand, obviously, than you would be with if you were like talking to someone. There's no unwritten rules socially that you have to abide by. There's no need to provide a certain amount of like eye contact or like know what to say and when to say it. It's just a comforting presence, the animals, and it could also be relaxing. I mean, they offer sensory comforts, which could be really grounding, just by like either leaning on you. I mean, I personally love when my dog leans on me or just like lays across for, just for no reason. I'm just sitting there minding my business and my dog decides to lie on me. It's actually a very comforting feeling. And I think that sensory input can be very calming for children. And yeah, there's no expectations of like, well, are you gonna listen to how my day was? No, they're just gonna be there for you. And so I think that's like one of the many benefits of having a pet.
I'm curious, in situations where so maybe autistic children are having a meltdown, or adult having a meltdown, and they have children, they have an animal in their home that's their emotional support animal. How do you, I don't know if you get into this as much because you're not in the home and you're not a dog trainer or that kind of thing, where you're like helping the family with how to train animals or how to interact with the animal itself. But I'm just curious, how do you work with, and I'm talking about probably somebody who has autism and they're on the more extreme end of the spectrum and they're having a meltdown. How do you work around, like, maybe they want to go to that animal and get comfort from that animal? Um, how do they learn to treat the animal in a certain way that doesn't hurt the animal? Not to, and I don't mean to imply that just because they're autistic they would ever want to hurt an animal, but it just in the process of having a meltdown, perhaps. Does that come up? Is there like a,
Like how to have those conversations to make sure that everyone is
yeah,
safe.
yeah, that was my long-winded way of asking that question. Yeah.
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, this is something that would ideally be discussed before an animal comes into the home or before there's frequent animal interaction. You would have to talk to the person or talk to the child about like what is safe behavior. How can we make sure that we are safe with our own bodies and with the animal that we bring into the home, and maybe like even talk to them about what to do if you're feeling like you need to maybe move around, or if you need to engage in behaviors that may not be safe around the animal, another option of what they could do. And it's not always appropriate to have the animal close if there are some behaviors that are unsafe for themselves or someone around them. Not to say that, as you said, it would ever be on purpose or meant to hurt anyone else, but you never know, and you want to prepare for as many situations as possible. And to be honest, I think that most people, autistic or not, neurodivergent and neurotypical, they want to be safe around their animal. They go to their animals to seek comfort and to have them calm down and reduce that stress hormone and to feel better. So I think that while it's an important conversation to have around safety, I think most of the time, most of us are not going to be unsafe with the animal that we have formed like a really significant bond with. I mean, that's my opinion. What do you think, Dr. Brucato?
Well, first of all, I think in addition to the sensory and the predictability of the relationship, it's important to realize that, an animal is simply not capable of judging you. And animals really, and I've argued this in my violence work, is that, there are very few phrases that bother me more in the world of true crime or violence than to hear someone say, that person did a terrible thing, he's an animal. Because animals, even if they could, they wouldn't do sadistic things to people, right? Dostoevsky famously said, even if a tiger could nail a man up by his ears, he wouldn't. Well, the thing is that's a human trait. And the reason, of course, is that cruelty takes a sense of meaning that human beings have, because we have language and certain brain structures that give us a sense of meaning. And as a consequence, we can be quite cruel For an animal, anything like that is done only as an instinctive thing. It's part of protecting the self or eating, basically. The reason it matters is because it means that if you're behaving with an animal in a way that doesn't threaten it, and you become the person that loves it and is giving food to the animal, the relationship is going to become one of no judgment and kind of perfect reciprocal support. Now, my experience has been that when I encourage someone who is neurodivergent to acquire a pet, that there is a process of exposure and kind of shaping of the behavior where they are going to learn gradually to not become sensorily overwhelmed by the interface with the animal. So if I pet it just this much, it doesn't make a loud barking sound, and I'm not going to get scared away, and it won't be scared of how hard I'm rubbing the fur, right? So you wind up with this kind of gradual process of meeting in the middle, where the animal's reaction is nice and chill, and then the person's reaction is to say, I like that feeling, and this is how much I have to, which becomes a kind of metaphor for doing that with humans, right? This is how much I talk to not overwhelm other people. This is, how much touch is appropriate. This is how much lack of touch is appropriate. This is etc. Because my sense has been that one of the great, I think, misnomers about people on the spectrum is that they're not interested in relationships because they tend to be kind of solitary sometimes. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with, I've talked to many people on the spectrum, and they'll tell you it has to do with the idea that there are so many steps involved in conversing and thinking through other people's feelings and so forth that it's overwhelming. It's sensorily overwhelming and intellectually overwhelming. So it's just easier to not. And there is something about animals that I think for all of us has an almost Zen quality to it because it forces you to live only in the immediacy of the moment. Like there's no like worrying about tomorrow or yesterday. It's just like we're here now. There's no words. We're just in this like Zen state of like, hugging on the bed and everything is fine, that kind of thing. And I think that's an amazing thing for anybody. That you know, the what was her name? Joyce Kenyon, the poet Joyce Kenyon, who's deceased, wrote a very famous poem called "Having It Out with Melancholy," where she talks about her relationship to depression. And at the end of the poem, she says, "The dog lays his head on my foot and saves my life."
Hmm.
Well, I think that's true for a lot of people, right? Because it reminds you, the in and out of your own breath, the idea that you're alive, that there's only this moment, and the dog's life is simple, right? The pet's life is simple. There's just immediacy, and it reminds you to live that way. So I think their pets are important for everybody, not just for people on the spectrum. But there's this very special extra quality that they can have for people who are having a difficulty with human relationships. And let me tell you, human relationships are hard for everybody.
Absolutely. Um,
We're a
yeah,
complicated
Yep.
group
yeah,
we're a complicated batch. Yeah.
definitely. Um, so as I was scrolling down, I realized that Miss Jill explained her sister is autistic. So she was saying
Oh,
she lights up with animals in a way she simply can't with others, but my older parents are very resistant to getting a dog. So I'm sorry, that's why you were asking that question about what to do when people, because you have a specific situation. I apologize. I didn't see that.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. And then, well, Mel made a nice suggestion. What about where people bring in pets to visit, maybe going somewhere like that. And then, so Jill said, how amazing
yeah.
would it be to have a place, almost like a petting zoo, that has trained therapy dogs for people like my sister to visit regularly and fill that need.
Mm,
Yeah, almost
yeah.
like a cat cafe,
The
but specific.
ASPCA, the North Shore Animal League, I think it is. I said it ASPCA, but it's the North Shore Animal League in New York, for example, lets you go in and play with the pets. There's like special rooms that are set aside, little gates around them, and you pick the pet you're interested in adopting, and you can play as long as you want, and then you get a feeling for the pet, right? And I think that's what what's being suggested here. If you could find a place that allows you to do that, my sense has been that most places that offer adoptions will allow you to do that, to go in and get a feel. Has that been your experience too, Mikki and Ann?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm actually in the process of. I just applied to be a volunteer at this shelter by my house, and basically you can
Oh,
volunteer for 2 hour time blocks to help with their animals. But you can also, but in learning about them, I realized that you could also go in and just visit and pet the animals. And I don't know if they provide rooms, but they do allow you to come and interact with animals for just short spurts of time, because they want the animals to be adopted. They want people to have good experiences when they come there. So I think that's one way to, like, increase the interaction and get used to animal interaction in a way where it's not quite as like it's not such a big commitment just yet where you have to bring one home. But to go back into that buy-in question, it's about exposing yourself and your family with animals that you think would be a good addition to your home. Um, Even if maybe that's not a dog, maybe it's a cat, maybe it's a smaller animal, a hamster, I don't know. I knew someone that, I'm not even making this up, had pet rats in home, loved all of them, and would go on vacation, and I had to feed them.
Oh.
my boy.
They're very
I knew
smart.
someone with a pet lobster. I knew
Oh,
someone with a
really?
pet lobster. Oh yeah.
So, it's really whatever works for you, right? It's very, very individualistic, and
You
unique
know
to whatever your
the
needs
the,
are.
the,
So,
the philosopher Sartre had a lobster. Sartre had a pet lobster. He used to walk it on a leash.
oh my God. I'm,
Whatever floats your boat.
There you go. I love a
yeah,
marine
whatever
tank,
floats your
Nikki
boat.
says. They are. They're very relaxing tanks of, with fish. You have a, and then she rewrote. She has a marine tank. It's beautiful to watch. Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. And so there are programs, I think, even if you're not going to adopt, there are some petting, there are some programs out there to volunteer to just pet them, I believe, at different
Yeah.
places,
And there's
even
like
if,
petting zoos, of course, like
Mhm.
if
Right.
permits. I think that there's probably a lot more resources out there than we are aware of. It might just take some little Googling
A little Googling,
to
yeah.
find the opportunities, but they are there.
And you're from the UK, Nikki, so she says, love to you all. It's late here. So she's probably going to bed, but maybe you can catch the rest tomorrow, Nikki. Good night. Yeah, it must be real late. You're up in the middle of the night watching this almost. Okay,
Yeah.
so yes, thank you for being here, Nikki, and everybody who's here. And if you have any additional questions, please feel free to pop those up. Anybody? So let me see. So we kind of jumped around, and I did have some questions. All right. So we did talk a little bit about, you touched on the process of loss. And so
hmm
wondering, how does this in reality work as it, when we kind of say it can be a teachable thing, but in reality, how does that go? And I'm sure it
hmm
depends, it's quite different for everybody. And, you're talking to someone who's, a basket case when one of my animals crosses over. So, but I'm just wondering what that's like in clinical practice, how how you work that out when you're working with somebody maybe who's on the spectrum and has had this is their emotional support animal. I mean, oh, that's rough. Excuse the pun.
Want to take it, Mikki?
Yeah, I mean, this is a sure. I think loss for anyone, a pet loss is such a profoundly difficult experience. And I think anyone who has lost a pet can relate. And when we talk about neurodivergent individuals, autistic individuals, the sudden change in routine and companionship can feel really devastating. And if really for anyone, I think this would be a devastating experience. And like my dog is almost 7, and I'm like, oh my God, stop growing.
I know.
Please stay young, stay the same age. So I mean, I can relate. And there are certain ways, just like with any loss, to help someone through it. And when a pet's death feels, from what I am told, like, like a loss, like a human loss in the family. It's part of their pets are part of the family for many people. And so when it comes to explaining loss to like let's say an autistic child, it's really important to be clear and direct about what happened, like not using vague or ambiguous language, like really explaining what happened in words that they can understand, right, at their developmental level. If we're not talking about an adult, if we're talking about a child, like explaining to them at their level what happened in a clear way. Sometimes the use of social stories can be helpful for children, sort of like a story about what is happening in their own lives to help them process it and to give them an outlet for what to do with this sadness and this grief. And that outlet could be creative. It could be drawing a picture of their pet. I think there are multiple ways to process that grief. One of my favorite things that I've done in the past with a grief group, this wasn't for just autistic children, this was just a mix of children. We were able to create a memory box of the person or pet that they lost, a memory box or a memory book. And it was using art to help them process their loss. And I found that this was really helpful, and understanding that it's okay to feel that sadness. It's okay to let it out and express it. And it's also okay, like through this process, they learn that change is an inevitable part of life. And with support and with guidance and with the other people in their lives who love them, they are able to get through it, and they are able to move forward with after experiencing this kind of loss, and that teaching that kind of resiliency and having them feel that sense of resiliency when they have some time after processing it, I think is really, really helpful for them and their families.
I can imagine, yeah.
Well, I'll just add to that especially with kids that are higher function autists, that my experience has been that it's very important to be okay with a lot of questions. You have to be okay with that. There's going to be very intellectualized, very like, I want to know everything that happened here, and I think even for the neurotypical person, that is extremely difficult as a construct, and I think can really be very terrifying. It's funny. Freud used to say that one of the reasons people become analysts, that people become therapists, is to learn to get close to a lot of people and lose them over and over and over and over and over. It's a way of mastering loss. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. Freud also wrote an essay once that he had a theory that when people get together after a funeral and have a big dinner, that it's their way of introjecting the person into themselves, like you're eating the food and it goes inside of you. And it's a way of taking the spirit, like cannibals do in ancient times. You put it inside of yourself now, and it's with you, right? It's what we call introjection, right? And that's something that's very hard to do because it's kind of abstract. But you have to help a person understand, like, that you never really lose the person because they're kind of with you always. For somebody who might think more concretely or have a hard time with, you can use some kind of transitional thing, like a transitional object that stays with them always. Like, for example, I have one person that keeps a picture of their dog that passed away on their phone. And what we do is they touch the phone, and I say, you have to use your memory to remember what it felt like to touch his fur. but you can touch the screen, and if he was here, what would he do? And he says, oh, he would put his head in the crook of my arm. He would rub his head and say, okay, so imagine it, because like that's exactly what he would do, right? And so the idea is, it's like a way of kind of keeping the animal with you in spirit. I think that's what Mikki meant about the memory box, right? It's like some transitional thing.
Yeah.
And that's very important. I remember once I treated someone who went away to war, and he used to carry a little circular photograph of his wife in a little locket. And he talked when he came back about how it sustained him through the entire experience. And I said, well, tell me about it. And he said, well, I would put the little picture in the palm of my hand, and it was like there was the whole crazy world going on around me, bombs, etc. And then it was like I had a little window that was in my palm where I could look through the window, and it was the world that she was in.
Wow.
Well, it's kind of like that. You look at the phone and you're like, okay, that's the little square in my palm where like that the dog lives forever, that kind of thing. And but I have to tell you, the other very important thing is to not be invalidating at how upset the person can be. For example, I had a client on the spectrum many years ago who had a hermit crab that passed away, and they cried over the hermit crab for at least a month. And the parents said, this is ridiculous. This is a hermit crab. You didn't cry this much over grandma. You're crying over the hermit crab. But the reality is that for the individual, that was a relationship that was just as valid. Yeah. And I think, as somebody who has lost pets and had an extremely hard time with it, and I think we all have here, I think it's very, very important to be validating. And there are very few things that bug me as much as someone who says, why are you overreacting like that over your pet passing away? Yeah. Well, try it and you'll understand, right? Sounds like you've been there, Ann.
Yeah. Well, I just think there should be, every so often you see these, someone will put out it's not a survey, when you sign a form, what the heck is the name? What is that called? I can't find the word. Like a petition. Trying to, there's the big cat in the background. Trying to get days off mandated for pet life.
I saw that following the death of a pet. I think I actually signed that. I'm not even joking. I think I signed the petition.
I'm like, where did it go? What happened? I mean, because I just 100% think it's so crazy to me that you're expected to just kind of move on, go back to work. Oh, maybe we'll let her have a day off, maybe two. Like, when this is a being that has been, people will say that I feel closer to my pet than I do to some people in my family. And the reality is they're with you in a different way. They're, like your dog might sleep with you in the bed. The cat might sleep with you in the bed. The hermit crab might sleep with you in the bed. I don't know. But
well, that didn't happen.
Maybe not. But there's just a different level of they're with you all the time, unlike probably any other person in your life. And you're sharing things with them. Your different things that you go through in life. They're there for those things. It's just usually unlike most people in your life. So it's just insane to me that people are expected to just kind of carry on and get back to work or maybe even school. I don't know, right after a loss like that. So that's just my 2 cents. I'm getting off the topic, but speaking of school,
it's important.
Well,
yeah.
Also. Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry. I was just. I just wanted to add, like, the level of vulnerability
where the animal is kept. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I think something happened with the video.
Sorry, there's a delay.
There's a delay.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Mikki, you go.
No, I just wanted to add, like, what you said, Anne, about how that animal, that pet, is often with you in ways that family members are not. It's also like the level of vulnerability that you
It's a good word.
feel with that animal. Like they are seeing you probably during your most difficult moments, during your happiest moments, in ways that maybe you don't allow other people to see. And so when you let down your walls that much, and when you are that vulnerable with a person or an animal, like that kind of, like maybe you really are closer with them than your other family members. It's probably true. And so like that vulnerability piece I think is really crucial. And it's like the glue that where we will form our closest relationships, like who we could be vulnerable with and really be our authentic selves and remove that mask that we show to the world. That's something that often only our pets, maybe our partners see.
Yeah, that's a good word. Vulnerability. I think that's what it is. Yeah. So that's a heavy topic. And it must just be very difficult to deal with. It's difficult anyway, but I can only imagine if you're, depending on your level of comprehension, how difficult it can be to deal with. So, and it did just trigger me to think about, education, programs like READ, reading education assistance dogs. So maybe talk a little bit about that, how these animals can help children with learning and different situations that might, relate to school or education.
Yeah. So READ is it's a pretty popular program where the school staff brings in dogs to like small groups, or actually sometimes just like during a classroom lesson, maybe on reading. But what I've learned about READ is that sometimes they'll bring a dog into a small group of children who are practicing reading aloud, and just having the dog present. And sometimes if the child is really shy, it might just be them and the dog, like reading to the dog. And it's been shown to increase motivation to practice reading aloud, because there's a sense of like less judgment. Like a dog is not going to criticize you on your reading. So it has been shown to just increase the engagement with children, autistic children and neurotypical children alike. Also, it reduces the anxiety that children might feel when they're reading, especially the children that are in that group because they're struggling already. So it does help with motivation, with feeling more confident. And also, what I think is one of the most important things is the willingness to take risks and make mistakes and read something wrong and then try again, which is a necessary part of building any skill. And so, yes, I don't know how popular it is since the pandemic, but that is a very research-based program to help children with reading.
And
also, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's okay. Go ahead. I'll go on to that afterward.
Oh no, I was just saying, like having sometimes classrooms will have like a therapy dog or an ESA, or I'm not sure the official term. I think it's like a therapy dog in the classroom, just to I guess reduce the stress that in general the children might feel during a certain lesson. But having an animal in the classroom that like the students feel a connection with has also been shown to improve like peer interactions. Students are kinder to the other. For autistic children in particular, can help. What do they call it? Animals can be like a social lubricant for them, help engage socially with their peers. It's something that they can focus their attention to and talk about in the classroom, rather than talking about maybe themselves or talking about whatever it is. Those social situations can be very stressful for autistic children. It's like, what do I say? What do I talk about? I don't know what to expect. But having an animal present, whether it's in the classroom or like walking your dog on the street, it provides like a sense of structure, a sense of predictability in those conversations, and can indirectly like improve social skills just by being there.
And that's kind of, it actually leads into, oh, go ahead, Doctor.
No, is it okay if I add something quickly to that? I've always been very interested in um, the way that seeing someone with a pet is something of a social cue that that person can be loving and social. For example, studies of dating sites show that it's a really good idea, particularly for males who are trying
Mm.
to draw heterosexual women, to put a picture of themselves with a pet because it's a cue for like you'd be a good dad, right?
Mhm.
And it's kind of interesting. In fact, I can tell you on the more malignant side of it that I've had at least one psychopathic individual in a prison setting tell me that they purposely got a pet so because they knew it would lure
Ugh.
people and make them seem kind and
Ugh.
loving, right? But it was done with a horrific intention, right?
Yeah.
So that, but the idea is that I think when you have autistic children that have a pet, it also has this way of kind of drawing other people to them because it's a way of it gives the social cue of if you just kind of get to know me a little bit, I can be warm and cuddly. I like
Right.
socialization, and you kind of cloak yourself in that the animal is adorable and drawing everybody, and you don't have to say a word, and
Yeah.
that everybody comes to the pet. So that I think that it has a way of increasing socialization, and having the pet with you decreases the anxiety that would prevent you from responding or being comfortable, that kind of thing. And so that I think for socialization alone in a school setting, emotional support animals, for example, are very important for
Mhm.
kids that are on the spectrum. And there are schools that won't even allow you to have a pet. There are even, I think
That's
there
where I
are
was
even
headed.
programs where, yeah,
That's what
yeah.
I was
So
going to
tell me,
ask. Do they really
yeah,
even allow them? Like I could see that being
yeah.
tough in a school setting.
I think like it depends on the
Specialized,
school. It
yeah,
depends, right?
yeah,
Yeah. One school that I was in, they were like, absolutely not. Then I was also in a specialized school where we were actually trying to get, I forgot what program it was at the time, but we were trying to work with, I think it's called the Good Dog Foundation.
Oh yeah.
To
Uh-huh.
Yeah, we were trying to work with them to get into this, to work with us to come into this school, but there was still like, it never happened just because it takes some time to get started and go through the process. And then I eventually left that school. But that's where I think you need to think about the buy-in and work with like school staff to really expose them to what kind of benefits these services, these programs can offer. There
mhm,
are like, I don't know, one school I know a colleague works at, she brings her dog. It's her personal therapy dog that she brings in to some of her, I guess, her sessions or classrooms or the students that she works with. Like it's very, very case by case, depends on the setting in the school.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because I mean, I could see it could get even a little logistically problematic if you have like a few kids who have them and then
Yeah, it's
other
like
kids
who's going to
want
bring it
them
in?
because yeah. So it kind of helps, like you said, having one
Yeah.
in the classroom already. Um, Maybe that bridges that gap. Just having a classroom
mm.
with one. Um, oh, hello, Missing Stolen Animals Ireland Group, a wonderful organization.
Oh,
Which is just, I'm like, it kind of dumbfounds me. They have this need for this. We don't really have this specific thing here, like missing stolen animals. Like, it's like a thing that I've learned through this group in Ireland that there's a need for, apparently. So, anyway, great panel tonight. As you know, I'm a big advocate for animals in Ireland. Yes, delighted to see Dr. Gary Brucato talk on this topic. Yes, we are too.
I'm usually talking about other things, so
I know. What's it like to be on a live stream where you're talking about
right. I
not?
get to talk about something so warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
I know. Well, I think it's important for balance in life.
Right.
I think we
Is there if people want to get in touch with you, maybe for so your checklist, Dr. Lee, or for services, how would you like people to do that?
So you people can reach us at our email at claritytherapynyc. I'm assuming it's going to be down like
Yeah, it'll be in the
below the video.
description.
spell it out. Also, my website, I have the checklist that I referred to today. So that is accessible there.
Okay, great.
Mhm.
So thank you so much. I think this was fascinating. Thank you so much for shining light on this topic. I think this is really important. Animals can really help people, with autism. This is a great topic and a great resource. So thank you both for being here. And by the way, if you're looking for a way to both support animals and children and something called the Warrior Dog Foundation, I do have a book that I just published. And the book is going to be for the launch, benefiting the Warrior Dog Foundation. They support canine veterans. So check it out. There's a QR code there. And it's Misha's Heart Adventure, Emotional Regulation While Learning How Animals Think and Feel. Half of the proceeds are going to go to the Warrior Dog Foundation. They're incredible. I had someone on last week who was wonderful. Check out that episode. So check it out. It's on Amazon. You can also go to my website, intuitivetouchanimalcare.com, and you'll find that there too. So everybody, thank you so much, and God bless, and take care, and hug your pets for me.
Rub my belly, rub my belly, rub my belly, my belly, my belly. Rub my belly, rub my belly, rub my belly, my belly, my belly. I like my ears rubbed.